Welcome back to another segment here on Gems Podcast. With me today is a special guest, John Bianchi, and he is going to be talking about Airbnb data and some of the incredible work that he's doing within this space. But before we jump in, here is a bit about John. John Bianchi has more than a passion for the short term rental industry. In his words, he's obsessed with it. John is known in the industry as the Airbnb Data Guy. In 2020, he sold his successful Chicago-based STR management business. John has developed a unique data-driven approach to evaluating vacation rental properties, and for the past few years has been advising investors and owners on how to identify the right properties to buy and to maximize their revenue. And without further ado, I want to welcome John Bianchi so he could tell us why he chose to get involved in this field as well as sell his business. So without further ado, please welcome John Bianchi.
Hello, thanks for having me.
My pleasure, John. And before we dive into the work that you're doing with Airbnb and the data behind it, I definitely want to give the audience a chance to connect with you in a fun and personal manner. So there are two ways that we could do that. One is an icebreaker, or two, it's a rapid fire 10 question game. What are you in the mood for?
Let's go rapid fire. I'm feeling
Okay,
it.
here we go. We're playing rapid fire with John and Genesis. Do 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 do. Question number one. Why did you choose Airbnb over VRBO or some of the other rentals?
Airbnb is just so dominant in the market, and it's so much easier to get bookings in comparison to VRBO, or at least it was. VRBO is pretty strong right now as well too.
Amazing. Question two. This is a follow-up question. Since you're already in the Airbnb space, do you think you'll tap into the VRBO space since that one's also strong?
Honestly, Airbnb is pretty dominant in almost every single market, so you really don't need VRBO. However, there are markets where VRBO is prominent. Like 50% of the people come through VRBO. So like super vacation areas, that's where VRBO really stands out. So if I were to be in those markets, then yes, I would look more into it. But if I were to be in like a Chicago again, I wouldn't even consider it.
Question three. What what made you sell your business?
2020. So everything came crashing to a halt and all of the bookings ended. And then I had somebody who wanted to buy my business. So like literally right at the exact same time as everything went away, he offered to buy my business. And then I also wanted to learn about renewable energy like a lot. And and so it was this sort of trifecta and it allowed me to sell the business. I say that's one of my only regrets in life is actually selling the business, and I want to get back into it. I did explore the renewable energy side of things for a little while, but fully came back into Airbnb.
Question four. What's your drink of choice? Coffee, tea, or something else?
Coffee,
Question five. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
probably flying. I think that'd just be so much fun. At like really high speeds though. I wouldn't want to just like casually fly. I want to be able to like get to the other side of the world real quick.
Question six. If you could recreate any significant moment in your life, what would it be and why?
Hmm. Seeing the Great Pyramids for the very first time, just because it was like one of those ones where it just hurts the brain. You know what I mean? Like something, when people say like a picture doesn't do it justice, that's one of those scenarios where you literally look at it and you're like, you can't even comprehend it.
Question seven. What is your favorite vacation spot?
Hiking. I like to climb mountains for vacation.
Okay, so do you have a favorite hiking spot then, or just anywhere where you could go hiking?
Pretty well anywhere that you can go on like a multiple day hiking trip that's climbing mountains, I would like. But the best one that I've done is Half Dome, I would say, in Yosemite.
Question eight. You get three random acts of kindness per day. What are your three for today that you'll be doing for someone else?
Um, that's a good one. Cleaning the dishes, making bed, and just generally like helping out around the house. I'm not leaving the house today, so that'd be
Okay.
about it. Yeah.
So you're going to do that for the other person in your house.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Make them happy.
Question 9, favorite food?
Chicken wings. Hot chicken wings.
Okay, like when you say hot, like buffalo wings or super,
Mm,
super flaming hot wings, like
Super, super flaming hot wings. I like to test out the hottest sauce you got at the place. Usually, some places are like crazy, crazy hot, and I go a little bit below that, but I'm working my way up.
And question 10, it's the pass or play question, and here are the rules. So if you pass, the roles are reversed, and you get to ask me a question. If you choose to play, I ask one last question to wrap up rapid fire. So do you want to pass or play?
Let's pass.
Okay, what's your question?
What is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you? Or one of the top ones
Oh,
in your life that just like cornerstone moment changed your life a little bit?
um, I think the recent one was finding out that my dad was found unresponsive in his hospital room that was right across from the nurse's station the day before Thanksgiving. And that's when I found out that I lost my dad and he was never coming back after just going through medical negligence with him. I think that was just crazy. And it just felt like straight up out of a movie because when I got the call, they're like, "Oh, I'm calling about so and so," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And I was like, "Oh, I think you have the wrong number." And then they're like, "Oh no, we're calling about Mr. Earl," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's my dad. What's up?" And they're like, "Oh, he was found unresponsive. We've been working on him for 8 minutes." And I said, "Oh, okay." They're like, "We'll call you back in 12 if we're able to revive him." Then they call back in 12, and they're like, "We've worked on him for a total of 20 minutes. There's nothing else we can do. We're sorry for your loss." And that was the conversation.
Wow.
So
Wow. I'm
it
so
was
sorry to hear that. That's not ideal. Oh my God.
no, and it was 8 days after he had a surgical procedure, and
Wow.
it was just the wildest, craziest thing. I would never wish that on anyone else, and it was
Wow.
just horrendous because there is a back end story to it, but I shared that in a lot of the early segments on my podcast, what really happened.
Yeah, I'm definitely sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Um, it sounds like it made a lot of movement in your life though, like to start the podcast because of that and all of these things. Like there's so a little bit of a silver lining, you know. I mean, it's never you never want that to happen. And I'm so sorry about it, but that little silver lining of you've probably helped tons of people since then just through this podcast alone.
Yeah, thank you so much. But on a lighter note, I guess one of the craziest things was skiing in Colorado with my husband. We do a lot of adventurous things and um, just taking off my skis in the middle of a slope where a lot of experienced people were coming down. So you have a lot of skiers and snowboarders, and I'm just face face down, sitting my ass in the snow, taking off skis, and I decided to hike down the rest of the slope instead of skiing down because my knee had popped. And then that
Oh
same that same day, someone who was skiing went straight off the cliff and had to be like
no.
rescued. So they lowered down like the cord and had to pull the guy back up, and we have no idea how it happened. But the good news of the story is he lived, and I was like, I thought you guys told me if I could snowboard. I mean, not snowboard, because I asked him about longboard because my sister had taught me how to longboard because she was based in
Yeah.
Cali for some time. So I was like, hey, is it kind of like either rollerblading or longboarding, just using kind of your body and like tilt? They're like, yeah, 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 you got it, you got it. And I was like, I don't got it. So that was just crazy. And I was like, I don't think I would ever ski again, but I will try snowboarding because I think you put more of your body movement in it. And if you could kind of lean forward and kind of tilt and maneuver, it just looked easier than skiing. But my husband,
Hmm.
he was like getting it. He was like, shh, shh, and he's like, I'm getting my Lindsey Vaughn on. And I'm like, who the hell is Lindsey Vaughn?
I don't even know who that is.
Yeah.
You know what? You might be the first person to ever say that snowboarding looked easier than skiing. I think I've always heard it the opposite way.
Yes. I don't know. It just in Colorado, it just did not seem
Too
like skiing
intense.
would have been easier than snowboarding because it's like you're working with two different things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
gosh, this is hard. And then the way you turn and have to slow down. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it just seemed like if I could just kind of put my body into it, like lean in, stop, kind of turn. with
Maybe
one
it'll just come
board.
more natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it'll just be way more natural for you. I tell you one thing, you will most likely not fall off of a cliff with a snowboard in comparison to skis, because skis are a lot harder to stop in comparison to snowboard. Snowboard, you just turn and you're on your face. So, like, if that's what you're worried about. Also, give snowboarding quite a few tries before you actually give up on it, because it takes a bit, and you have to like get the feel for it and feel for it. And so, if you just try one day, you're likely not going to get it, but a few days or over a few seasons, you'll get there for sure, and it's way better than skiing. So that's
Okay,
my
I'll make that my challenge next time we go back to Colorado. But until then, after this baby, I will stick to doing things that are over water. We love zip lining, so we
There you
zip
go.
line every time we go to a new place, like whether it's in country or out of the country. So
Nice.
thank you for playing rapid fire, John, and asking that question. So, audience, you kind of got a glimpse into John and I in a fun and personal way. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation. And since I'm from down south, I always say meat and potatoes because I love to eat and I'm a foodie, but I have to exercise so I won't be big as a house. Um, so, John, let's dive in to Airbnb data.
Yeah,
Okay, so before you got into Airbnb, we know you had your business, which the pandemic rocked it, and you sold your business. So, what else was your background like? Just give us a Cliff Notes version of growing up, education, and etc. So then we could really appreciate what you're doing now.
perfect. Yeah, so I don't really have true college experience. I went to, I don't really call it, it's like a fake college. It's one of these ones where you do like really quickly. It's for people who are like doing they worked in a factory till they were 40, and then they wanted to get like another degree or something like that. So it's sort of sped up, and I hated school, so that's what I did, and it literally did nothing for me, and it was a complete waste of money. So there was that. And when I was 22, I got my investing license, investing in insurance, and I became a financial advisor. By the age of 24, I was managing $10 million, and I had a business partner managing 90 million, and had my own office, had my name on the door, all that fun stuff, but just absolutely hated it. And I saw where it was going to, and I was like, this is just not for me. So I started looking for something different, and I found out about Airbnb, started doing it out of my own personal house, and then just kept like reading articles and different stories of like how to actually turn it into a business. Eventually got to the point where I raised money, sold my investing business, raised money, went and started the Airbnb business. Did that for 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, and had about 15 locations at my like max, which honestly isn't a crazy amount, but they're large 4 bedrooms, so they were like these sort of beasts of places. There were a bunch of them were in Chicago, somewhere down in Scottsdale, somewhere in Michigan. Also had my own Airbnb cleaning company as well, and then once again I sold that in 2020. And then one thing that I learned how to do really, really well was understand Airbnb data, like significantly better than most people. And I knew that because I had done presentations on my success, and it was based off of a lot of it was based off of data. And I had a lot of people reach out to me about it and just ask a lot of the same questions, and realized a lot of them were failing. And so I put together a little course that I was going to try and sell. And I realized I had no idea how to sell a course, and it wasn't that great. So I literally just gave it away for free and put it on YouTube. And that by putting that onto YouTube, it actually generated so much business that it turned into a Airbnb data consulting business. So I didn't really set out to do it, but it turned into it, and it's been awesome. And it just kind of keeps growing and growing since then.
Wow, that's impressive and congratulations there. And pretty much what you did in a sense was you used the information that you had and you put it out there since you didn't know how to sell it in the form of an e-course or a master class or whatnot. So what you did was the free to fee method. So you put out a free product with information that you knew people were already coming to you, and in turn that generated revenue because people gravitated to the content that you put out. So nowadays, what we hear are all these click funnels, or you have to find a lead magnet or something like that. So you were already a step ahead of the game, not really realizing it, and now that turned into another business that is very lucrative. And then just to hear how you went into investing, and then you sold that business, and then you started another business and you sold that business. So just to really follow your heart and what you're passionate about. I think just really understanding who you are and what drives you and where your passion lies also showcases the success, because if you're super passionate about it, it won't feel like it's work or etc. And then you focusing on a niche and becoming so good at the craft and knowing that it's something that other people are going to use and leverage also sets you apart, especially in an industry that can be very inundated with other people that are doing the same thing. But not everyone is going to be a John Bianchi, and that's cool. And I know with Airbnb, just from using them in the past, whenever we go to different cities and we kind of want to stay at an Airbnb versus a hotel or whatnot, there's a difference between super hosts, and then they also changed their settings where in the beginning they weren't requiring people to submit their driver's license or anything like that, but based on what happened with some of the hosts or some of the people that rented, they had to really take into consideration security measures and etc., to really make sure that you're protecting the host, but also the guests are also respecting the integrity of the home that they're going into, because some people's homes are getting destroyed and I'm like, if they
It's
did that
yeah,
to my home, I would be hands down so freaking pissed. I
yeah.
don't even
I
know what
will
I would do.
I agree. I will say that that idea of like Airbnb guests ruining people's homes is 100% the news overplaying it. Like the news picking up this head title, this title, and it's Airbnb, this big company, and then they're saying like it's something scary, like that people are ruining their homes. That is it is so rare for that to happen. It's not even funny. Like the amount of amazing people that stay at your home, the amount of people who are so nice to your home, take care of your home, like let help out, even like some people fix things in your home. Like I had I think I did the math. It was almost like 100,000 people that I had like taken care of in that 2.5, 3 year span. And out of that entire time period, I had one smart TV get stolen. Out of it was $300. It was like a screw up on the booking end of somehow, and somebody got into the listing and they took the smart TV worth $300. Over 100,000 people, or yeah, almost 100,000 people, and $300 worth of value lost. I mean, like that's amazing, right? So, I just want to put that out there because like it's super rare, and the way I always explain to people is like, how many hotel rooms have you destroyed? Right? And the answer is always none, right? And people treat your house pretty well the exact same way they treat a hotel room. So it's like it's not as bad as you think.
Amazing. And thank you for debunking that, because we did hear that a lot on the media about like people destroying homes and etc. So I
Yeah.
do appreciate you sharing that. And let's dive more into the data. Like what are some of the datas and the KPIs, so key performance indicators, that you look at behind Airbnb?
So when it comes to the reason why I can have a business related to Airbnb data is because it's really confusing to figure out how much a home is going to make as an Airbnb full time, right? So there's a lot of variables that come into play when a home is an Airbnb to figure out how much it's going to make. Does the hot tub make a difference? Do the way the photos make a difference? Does the title make a difference? Does it have views of the city or does it not have views of the city? Like all of these little things make a difference in how much revenue an individual home can make. And so you can literally like there's 4 bedrooms in the exact same zip code in Austin, or sorry, in Nashville, where they're making 200,000 and some are making 50,000. And they're in the exact same zip code, right? And so one thing that I've been trying to help people understand is like how to get to that one answer of how much is this home going to make, right? If I were to run it as a full-time Airbnb and run it really well. Because when it comes to a long-term rental, it's really simple. You look at the other, if I buy a long-term rental and it's got 2 bedrooms, I look at all the other 2 bedrooms and how much they're renting out for on a monthly basis, and I know how much I'm going to make on an annual basis, right?
So,
Um,
question really quick there,
yeah.
John, I want to ask. So, you just mentioned looking at the other rentals. So, what you're doing is your market research analysis, and you're comparing, right, the area that you're thinking about renting in to the other competitors that are in the area to kind of see how your property is going to align with that. Is that correct?
That's exactly it.
Okay.
And going really deep into the detail,
Okay.
right? So it's called the Burger King logic. So McDonald's spends millions of dollars to figure out what corner to be on. Burger King opens up across the street, right? So we are the Burger King in this situation. We are looking at all of the Airbnbs that have existed, figuring out exactly how much they're all making, and determining like if we open up across the street with the exact same product, will we make the exact same amount, right? And for the most case, like until you get to oversaturation, then you start losing revenue. However, for the most case, and in my experience, you can almost replicate to a T what is already out there, and it's going to make almost the exact same amount as the other home that is across the street, right? So the idea is like you want to look at your competitors, you want to figure out exactly how much they're making, and you want to figure out all the details as to why they're making that amount of money, right? Right. And so like what I do and I teach people to do is make a list of all of the different things that are inside the home, and write them out and then go to the next listing and do the exact same thing. Because the whole point of data is to find a trend or a pattern, right? And so what my company does really well is we take the data and we sort it and organize it in a way that allows you to really easily see a pattern or a trend within any city, any neighborhood really quickly, right? And then from there, you're sort of just going through and trying to figure out exactly what you need to be able to hit that number, right? So, as for instance, the Nashville example that I just gave, the 4 bedroom within downtown Nashville, there's some homes making 200,000. Like there's a handful of them. There's about 10, but there's about 20 that are making about 100,000, right? And so what I would do is I'd go through there and I'd write out every single last item in that 200, the ones that are making 200, because I can guarantee you they're all going to look very, very, very similar. The kitchen's going to be similar, the photos, they're likely going to have rooftop patios that are overlooking the cities, and all these different things, right? Like these really nice features. They're probably going to have luxury touches. That's why they're making 200,000. And then the 100,000 home is going to be, less, but you want to write out what those are. And then the reason you do this is because you don't want to buy a home assuming it's going to make 200,000, but it has all the features of a $100,000 home, right? And
Okay, that
yeah,
makes
so
sense.
that's the
So,
general logic.
and I like the general logic. And since you mentioned Austin earlier, I guess it was a faux pas. I resonate with like Texas area because I'm in the Texas area. So
Nice.
I know whenever we think about Texas, people always say everything is bigger in Texas, which it is depending on where you're located. And
Yep.
I'm just going to use Austin for example because we love the Austin area. So Austin area, there's certain types of different metropolitans that may be outside of the Austin city limits, like Leander, Pflugerville, and some other places like that. And then
Yep.
whenever you go look at the listings on Airbnb from a consumer standpoint, I like to look at the pictures. If I can't see a good visual representation of what that home looks like or what I'm getting, I'm going to move on to the next because
Oh yeah.
we've all heard that pictures are worth 1,000 words. Then I'm going to also look at what's in the area for me to do. I mentioned I'm a foodie, I like to eat. So, are you going to tell me about the food places that's in the area, especially if it's an area that I've never stayed in? What type of activities are there, especially if you're doing like a staycation with either your girlfriends, your guy friends, or maybe your partner? You kind of want to make sure that you have things in the vicinity that you can do. Okay, does and let's think about pets because some people do allow pets in their homes, but if you're a type of person that has allergies and other type of sensitivities, you need to know that information up front so you don't book that home and then you go there to have a good time, but then you end up having a flare up because they didn't allude that pets were welcomed. And then you're like, oh crap, I'm sharing this shared space with someone who has a freaking cat or a dog or whatever the case may be. I love animals, but I may not always want them in the house because some animals shed more than others and
Yeah.
whatnot. Also, is there a particular space that may be off limits? Like some people put off limits area in their Airbnb. They're like, you can have access to all of this except this.
Yeah.
And that could be a deal breaker for some in my opinion. So some of those are the things that I look for as a consumer. But then one thing that really pissed me off with Airbnb is sometimes whenever something happens, like a person that you may always travel with gets banned from Airbnb, but then if you're associated with that person and you didn't do anything wrong, they ban you as well. And I'm like, hold up, we're two different people,
Mm,
here. Why does that happen or whatnot? And I'm not sure if it's because of what has happened in the past with Airbnb or what, but I also think that some of those should be built into the data and the metrics as well. And I think some of the people like that I've talked to that has happened to, they went from using Airbnb to VRBO, and then with VRBO, depending on where you're going, like by background, I'm first generation American, so my family is Caribbean. So sometimes down in the islands and some of the tropical places, they may not always have Airbnb, but they do have VRBO.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's yeah, I've never actually heard of somebody getting banned because they were going with somebody who was banned or got banned or something like that. Like that really sucks. That's
yeah,
kind of there's been, I mean, like I've had issues with Airbnb, like Airbnb guests, pretty bad ones as well. And like you know, it's some people should be banned. Let me just say that in a nice way. But you know, who they're with shouldn't be banned necessarily, right? But that sounds like Airbnb just kind of overcompensating. But I mean, you do have VRBO as well, like definitely, and in some areas, like VRBO definitely makes more sense too. And you know, I like that you're talking from a consumer perspective, right, of Airbnb, because I always try to put myself in the shoes of the consumer when I'm thinking about how I'm putting together an Airbnb, right? Or when I'm teaching people like this is how you have to do this if you want to make the amount of money, right? Because from an investor side, they're always just thinking like, oh, how much money can I save, or you know, what's the best deal or whatever it is. But it's like you should be thinking more so about how can I win in the eyes of the guests, because that's how you're going to generate even more revenue than you would have expected. And one thing that you mentioned was the photos. And the photos, I always say that the photos make a $10,000 difference. And it's like it's pretty clear to me with if you have bad photos in a good home, you're going to make $10,000 less than if you were to just take a better photo shoot. Professional photo shoot, without a doubt, it's going to cost you somewhere between like $200 to $500, worth every single last penny, because you're going to make about $10,000 off of that. And so as an investor side, now the other thing of like how to win, right? Not only is it great photos, but it's every little additional amenity. So you were
yes,
mentioning something there, and it kind of triggered my mind going like, what I've noticed, the people who constantly are winning or at the top. When I say winning, I mean like there could be, you know, 54 bedrooms in an area, but there's a couple that are at the very, very top, right? And they're making like quite a bit more than everybody else. And the way that they're winning is that they have provided more and more and more amenities than anybody else. They have the hot tub, the putting green, the extra space. They went all out with the deck. They really went all out with the design. They made the photo that showed you where all the extra restaurants are around town. They showed you what the walk score is. They put like little descriptions underneath every single photo so that you understand exactly what you're looking at. They provide like every single little thing you could think of. And those are the ones that have really high occupancy. People pay more for them because they're like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. You know what I mean?
absolutely. And one thing I want to chime in too, like I've seen some people even provide snacks like a welcome package for their guests, like if it's a
Yeah.
first time guest, and then like the bathroom stuff like the toiletries and etc. Because let's think about it, depending on what area you live in, if you're in a melting pot and you have a lot of business people that travel that choose to go Airbnb route versus like a hotel route, because maybe it's cheaper for the overhead costs for their employers. And I'm just saying this as an example because I come from a corporate background.
Hmm.
Then if you put those things there, it's going to be like, oh, hashtag soul, because I could pack less, especially if you are traveling far. You need to be mindful of the amount of luggage that you're packing and etc. Especially if you're going on a business trip, you want to make sure you're staying in a nice area. You want to make sure there are certain things in place for you and etc. And then if the Airbnbs, like I know, like with a hotel, for example, they hire car services for us that travel on business. So if you're an Airbnb host, like why don't you just have like a list of maybe reputable car services that you have personally used that you could have vouched for your guests, like whether it's a Uber, whether it's a Lyft, whether it's a drive or whatnot. Or in Austin, for example, e-bikes, tell them how to use the e-bikes or the scooters, or if there's like a great mass public transportation, put that information in there so people who are new to the area are not struggling to find that info.
100%. Like those are great, great ideas too. And you got to treat it like a business. You know, yes, you're just renting out your house, but the people who treat it like a business and think like, what is a hotel doing right now? You know what I mean? Like what kind of like information and everything is a hotel providing, and how can I do the same, right? When you go from that perspective, it really changes the way that you think about it, and you start to act more professional as the host, and you start to do more for the guests, and you start to make more money. And it's just like, it's just how it works. It literally is just how it works. So yeah.
So another question I want to ask, because I want to be respectful of your time commitment, John. Are there maybe 5 to 10 tips that you could share when it comes to Airbnb data that someone who's interested in getting involved in Airbnb from an investment standpoint can be mindful of as they begin to start off in their journey with their home? Like whether it is a 1 story home, a 2 story home, single family home with maybe some shared spaces, because that's also another complexity that people need to be mindful of, especially if they're actually living in the same home that they're renting out.
Yeah, definitely can give probably 150,000 tips. So, but I'll give some of the main ones. So, if you're like brand new to it, there's kind of a couple of steps that you need to go through here. So, like the very first one I always say is regulation. Understand your regulation, otherwise you're going to get screwed. You're going to break the law, and you're going to lose a bunch of money. The next one is data. You really want to understand your data as much as you possibly can. And then the third thing you want to do is learn how to actually operate an Airbnb. So operating one Airbnb is very, very easy. So don't like stress about it. You'll figure it out once you get the property. So then therefore focus in on the data to understand everything you need to know about the data so that you are ensuring that you are actually getting a good property, right? So like the whole motto, I can never remember the whole thing about my company, like what we're trying to solve here is ensuring that nobody signs an unprofitable lease. So a lot of people do rental arbitrage. They'll sign a lease for a home, they're renting out the home, they're turning it into an Airbnb, and they end up paying more money in expenses through the lease, the utilities, and everything than they actually make through Airbnb. And so I'm trying to make sure that does not happen anymore by people understanding the data in the process, right? Now, the tip with the data is to not just look at an individual property that meets your budget and try to sign that property or buy that property or anything like that and assume that it's going to do well. Instead, what you want to do is actually take it a step back. So you want to look at whatever city you're in, whatever market it is, take a look at the entire market, take all of the data in that market and bring it into an Excel sheet and sort it in a way that allows you to see patterns and trends across the different zip codes or neighborhoods of that market, right? Because the amount of money that you make in one area of the town for a 4 bedroom will be very different from another area of the town, right? And it could be the best spot might be right outside of downtown, or it might be really far away from downtown. But you don't know until you look through the data and actually figure it out. And as some examples for this, my specialty were 4 bedrooms within Lincoln Park in Chicago. Hands down, that was like the best spot for me to be. However, a 3 bedroom in that exact same area actually lost me money. So I had to know the data really well to truly understand what I was getting myself into. It wasn't just the neighborhood, it was also the bedroom size, right? And I can go through a ton of different examples, but what I'm just trying to say is like, I do have a free course on YouTube that allows you to uh, go through a process that I created. It's a very manual process, and it allows you to pull the data and understand exactly what you need to know about a market. And that's what I taught. Now, if you want to get more in depth with it, if you really want to go into it, you can reach out to me directly and I can show you exactly how I do it the non-manual way. We can work together on that side of things.
Amazing. And thank you for sharing that, John. And for your call to action, let them know if you have a specific call to action outside of going and checking out your YouTube video. And if you don't have a specific one, plug your website information and where you primarily hang out on social media so they could connect with you.
Awesome. So the two courses on YouTube are definitely going to be like a great place to start to learn about me and what I'm capable of, what I know, and kind of get like a good footing on the data. However, I would strongly recommend that you actually just set a call with me. It's a free consultation. We hop on a call for 15 minutes and like you talk about whatever your market is, and I try and help you understand exactly what your options are. You can email me at hello@pointanalytics.co, and we'll hop on a 15-minute call. I don't really have socials, so you have I do have an Instagram that you can follow. It's not directly related to Airbnb data, but if you find my YouTube, just type in my name, John Bianchi, or Airbnb data or AirDNA, you are going to find me there. And then you can go into my about page and find my Instagram there. It's Jonathan Antonio Bianchi. That's my handle. It's not a very good one, but email me. It's hands down the best way.
No worries. And thanks for sharing that. I can't believe you don't actually have an Instagram or about this information, but it's incredible that you do have the YouTube channel where people could go grab that information. So, John, all of your contact information will be in the show notes. So, your website, and then they could also backlink to the other information that you mentioned, those two courses, as well as do you have like a calendar link there for your 15-minute discovery/consultation call?
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. So there you have it, audience. Make sure you like, comment, follow, and subscribe. We're on 40 plus platforms. You could also see this video recording on our YouTube channel by going to Gems with Genesis Amaris Kemp. And we are currently looking for brand sponsors. Spaces are limited, but if you would like your brand, your products, your services heard right here, where this podcast is ranked in the top 2% globally out of 2.8 million podcasts per the metrics on www.listennotes.com. I am looking for you so we could begin to collaborate because there's more than enough room at the table for all of us to win, and we could go a lot further and faster when we link arms and do it together. So until the next segment, next guest, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Have yourself an amazing day.